So, first Netflix African original,
Yeah, man.
and you get to be the director. How does that feel?
So it's the first Netflix original out of Africa. It's an exciting opportunity. It's actually a privilege because in a way, when people sort of produce a piece, it's because they go, people have a story to tell.
Yes.
And for one to be trusted to tell that story is an incredible honor, especially if it's going to represent the continent at large as the first out of the continent. So I'm very excited about it. Also, I'm like, why me?
Yeah.
But I'm also glad that it's me because I think it's an incredible opportunity.
And what were some of the, not really semantics, but what were some of the difficult parts of dealing with this, or just basically making sure you represent the African continent as best as you can?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges would essentially be like Africa, for instance, is a massive continent. It's 55 countries if you count South Sudan, depending which side of the political line you're on. But 54, 55 countries, a lot of different sort of nuances, different regions, cultures, tribes. So you can never really say like what we're gonna tell will represent the whole continent in a way, because of the, the continent is not homogenous. It's not like the people are so different.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So firstly, the pressure becomes about that. It becomes like, how do you tell a story that is firstly, over-encompassing, at the same time makes every part and every region of the continent proud that there's a piece out of Africa that tells the story. And then the pressure, of course, that's one of the biggest challenges, is the pressure of actually having to execute at that level. Because you understand, like, not only will plus 190 countries see it, but there'll be like one massive continent that says this is one of our own pieces, right? So the pressure of that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges. I do think, though, that there's a couple of things about Queen Sono that in the crafting of it and in the writing of it that makes it amazing for it to cover the whole continent. And firstly, it's not trying to be something else, right? So it's proudly African, right? So I think that first step of it being unapologetic, of it being proud to be itself, is a great thing. Also, what I really appreciate about the show is that it's not using pity as a vehicle to tell the narrative, story, right? It's not a pity party of, oh, look at us as Africans, follow our story because shame on us. It's like, it's proud to be African. It stands sort of on a high hill, and it screams African with boldness. It screams African with pride. And I think that's the one thing that whether or not the story is set in Nairobi, Joburg, Harare or somewhere else, whether you come from Ghana and there's not any aspect of the narrative that speaks to you, but that idea that it's an African narrative, that is not playing a pity party, that is proudly African, I think will resonate with anybody that's from this continent.
And how important was it for us to have a story like this also have a lot of firsts? Like, it's one of the first with a female African lead. And how important was that?
Firstly, how important was it for us to have an African Netflix original? Right? I think that's the first one, right? And I think that's the first thing we need to talk about, right? Because the importance of that thing says Africa has stories to tell, and they've got stories to tell their own way, right? With their own glance on the world, with their own optics on the world, right? And I think that's a very important statement, right? Because for as long as we've existed, we've seen Africa through the optics of Western view, or through the optics of, of everybody else except for Africans. And I think that act of Netflix wanting to do an original African narrative means that it shines a light on the idea that Africans want to tell their own stories and treat their own stories with the grace, the poise, and the importance that it deserves. Right? And then secondly, for there to be a lot of firsts is partly because it is the first one. Right?
True.
And I think it's very important that the first one actually makes a statement about some of the narratives that haven't been told. I think the first one is important, that it shows some aspects of our lived experience that a lot of the stories that have told stories of Africa have never told.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
think because it's the first one, it has to show, a lot of characters and the power in characters, especially female characters, black female characters that have never been told, right? So because it's the first, the onus is on us to tell a lot of things and break a lot of stereotypes, because hopefully on the back of this foundation, a lot more people can spread out and tell a lot more stories that are all encompassing and touch on aspects of African narratives that have never been touched on before.
And what pulled you to the story? Outside of some of the stuff you've spoken about, what's the one thing that you love about the story? I'm sure there's a lot of things you love
What
about
pulled
it.
me to the story?
Yeah.
Well, firstly, a call from Netflix.
Yeah?
Who says, nah, Netflix, I'm busy, we'll chat later. Who does that?
Nobody.
Nobody does that. But after that, like once I was in the room, the idea that Pearl 2C was in it as a lead, the idea what we just spoke about,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like the idea of a strong black female protagonist was incredible for me. Also, it's a genre like sort of the spy thriller genre. It's a genre that we haven't really explored in the continent. So for me, it's like it was an incredible challenge and an intriguing challenge to take on a genre that we haven't really tried out and that we haven't really explored. Also, when you go through the script, I mean, it touches on different aesthetics around the continent. And, I'm one person, like I was saying to somebody the other day, I've been in about 48 African countries.
Yeah.
I need to do another 7. Then
Yes,
I would
yes,
have
yes. Cover the whole continent.
So
Yeah?
I've been sort of privileged enough to shoot in different parts of the continent, but I've never seen so much different aesthetics and visual cues from different parts in one project. And I think that's the other thing that excites me, because the show is going to be so colorful that every episode is going to feel like a bit of a trip around the continent, which is so slick, because it will have its own energy, its own dynamic, its own textures. So I quite like that. It's like feeling like we're putting every aspect and aesthetic of the continent in one massive pot. Then we're cooking it and we're presenting it back, The other thing that I like also is the action stuff.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of cool action sequences. But also it's not action just for the sake of action.
How difficult was to direct that though?
Yeah, you see, that's actually one of the things I liked about the show, is because I haven't done a lot of action stuff, right? And to do a show that has so many action stuff with highly experienced, stunt coordinators, with highly experienced action sequence choreographers, it's amazing, So it has been difficult, but I think we've been equipped with people that, make it easy, right? And make it the learning curve for me to learn around people that have so much expertise and so much experience has been incredible. So that's been one of the things that attracted me to the story, right? So it's funny, there's one sequence, massive sequence, which is an ambush, right? But then we're doing it, it's a shootout.
Yeah.
And we're calling it gun fu, because it's like kung fu with guns. And for me, just to tackle.
And what episode is that, do you know?
That's gonna come in episode 4.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna be exciting because it's one of the big set pieces that we're doing. So when we're sitting short listing and storyboarding it with Grant Powell, who's our stunt coordinator, fantastic, highly experienced individual, I was so excited. I saw the image come together before we even shoot it, right? And so I've never done something at that scale, so that was one of the things that drew me to this show. Besides the personal drama, the intrigue and the story, the traveling around the continent, I think the epic set pieces of fight sequences, gun shootouts, political drama, social realism. Oh my God, there's so many. So I think overall the show itself has been like an incredible opportunity for me. And when the call came, I just couldn't resist.
Cool. Kebs, thank you for your time. We could speak the whole day.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, sure.